I want to thank everyone for coming. We always thank our sponsors, which is Photo Shelter, Archive, Epson, Pro Photo Daily, and American Photography. I just want to let everyone know the week of June 26th through the 30th, 2 or 3 of those nights we'll have photojournalists continuing covering the war in Ukraine. So that should be happening. That'll be another spectacular week. So just look for notices coming. So tonight we have two friends. One is Tim Smith, and we're going to start off with Jason Gardner, who's in Paris and who's half asleep. So we had recorded a presentation last week, and we are going to run that right now. So hit it, Jay, and off we go. Thanks everyone for coming.
Oh, and I'm available for questions on chat. I'm just coming from a fundraising event, so I'm had a lot of champagne, so it's better that I do the pre-recorded. So go, guys.
Okay. So everybody, I'm glad everyone is here tonight. We're very thankful to have Jason Gardner coming back. Really, I mean, it's really terrific in that he was on with us, we thought 3 or 4 years ago, and now this project is completed. And a book is coming out, and we're thrilled to have Jason come back. Everyone is here tonight. We're very thankful to have Jason Gardner coming back. Really, I mean, it's really terrific in that he was on with us, we thought 3 or 4 years ago, and now this project is completed. And a book is coming out, and we're thrilled to have Jason come back and show us almost the completed version. And you'll see in the chat room, we'll drop in the website, the book, the GoFundMe page, everything there, so that if you want to contact Jason for any number of reasons, it's all there. So with that, Jason, it's all yours.
Thanks, Frank, and so glad to be back. Yes, this actually, what I'm showing this audience is a expanded version of the book. You're getting a little bit of insider stuff, some video as well, including some pieces from when I was in the field, just to give you guys a sense of the experience. And I'll talk about it a little bit more as we go. But so this is not really the totality of the book. This is kind of the book plus. So here we go.
Yeah, Jason, give us some background how you started the project,
okay.
as you go through. So
as I go through?
Yeah,
Sure. Alrighty, just gonna hit full screen.
There you go. Great.
So just trying to move some stuff around to get all organized here. And we're off. So this is called We the Spirits, which is a study of traditional carnival over 16 countries, which I've shot over 10 years. One thing is that please put your sound on, because I said I'm putting on video, so there's some audio aspect to the video. But just I thought I would start out a little bit by saying I am a self-taught photographer. So when I only became a photographer after traveling the world in my 20s, and I started shooting landscapes and kind of beautiful things. And this is with a point and shoot, camera, 1998. I think it was the Yashica. And I started getting interested in stories and people's stories. This is in Dominican Republic in 2004, I think, with the Holga. And in New York, I started shooting music. That was my first love. And I did some independent musicians. I shot Antibalas in New York. This is, I think, 2006 for a small independent magazine. Global Rhythm was a world music magazine. I shot Eugene Hutz of Golo Bordello. I started getting some commercial work from that, but photo editors and curators started saying, well, we want to see more of your personal work. And I thought, well, I've been to some countries, but I've never been to Brazil. Let's go and just shoot the music and see what happens. So literally, it was that basic. So I started going to Recife in the northeast of Brazil. And at first it was about just traditional music, but soon as I kept on returning, it was more about carnival. And this is in the middle of the carnival of year 2. I went back 5 different times over 8 years. So this is in one place in Pernambuco, which is the northeast state, and the main city is Recife. I also went to the interior, the cane cutting region, but this is in the city in the midst of carnival. And people think that this image is comped up, but no, it's not. It's just these weird flat hanging things. And the carnival here is pretty traditional. It's a big city, but it's kind of in small groups. And you get a lot of people, of course, but there's a lot of, it's very authentic. And the time I was shooting it, this is between 2004 and 2010, it was well known in Brazil, but not very well known outside of Brazil. Everyone knew Rio and Bahia. Really colorful. And I structured, this is my first book, and you'll start to see some of the imagery that will, in terms of style, when I first started shooting with film, square film, I kind of split up this into 3 chapters, which is the kind of very public carnival, the colorful, the culture, that's kind of some of that supported that. This is a man dressed as a baiana, and it's also in the countryside of Brazil. You'll start to see a little bit of this theme of transvestism, of identity, sort of things inverting during carnival. In general, part of the things that I love about shooting carnival, besides the festiveness and the colors, but is all these deeper themes that emerge.
And Jason, what was it for you that sort of like the hook that all of a sudden this is going to be something special? I've bought into the whole idea of carnival and photographing it.
Yeah, it was, I guess I started wanting to shoot music, as I said, in Brazil. And I started with the musicians. The musicians said, you've done some good shots, but you have to come back during carnival to see when all the action's coming. I went during one carnival in 2005, and while I was there 3 weeks, I felt like I scratched the surface. So I went again the next year. After that second year, after going deeper and deeper, I realized this is something I want to keep on going in the same place. Because there's an interesting phenomenon. A lot of carnival photographers just show up. I call them parachute in for 3 or 4 days, and they never see them again. As I kept returning to the same place, people started inviting me to different things. And this became the book, A Flower on the Mouth, which I published in 2013, just to show you an idea of where I come from and the root of the project that I have now. And I call it The Beauty and the Burden of Carnival in Pernambuco, Brazil, because it was just a beautiful thing, but also a very important thing for their culture, and they worked at it all year. Did I hit play? Yeah. So I call it The Flower on the Mouth because of this character, the Caboclo Lança, which is this very important character in the countryside. And he puts the flower in his mouth because of 3 things: his connection with nature, also to show something beautiful. I mean, these guys are cane cutters and they're very masculine and macho. And it kind of also puts him in the frame of mind to carry these heavy carnival costumes. I mean, there's these huge bells, which you'll see in a second and hear. In the Brazilian summer, it's a lot of work. It's 3-4 straight days, day and night of moving. So it kind of puts him in the right frame of mind, excuse me. And this is a kind of a wider shot of these guys. You can see that they're kind of very intense colors. And so here comes the first video. Flavor. So as well, besides these crazy carnival characters, there's the Brazilian maracatu in Recife. It's the African Americans, largely in the favelas, who they sew and get their costumes together all year. This is the queen, the profile of the queen of the maracatu. And interestingly, in this one, it's the queen, the female, who's the leader of the group. So there she is in her finery. But she's also the leader of the religious side. So this is the temple in the next door to the main headquarters.
And those costumes that we see, I mean, any idea how long it takes to construct those things? And is each year, does everyone put on something different, or they share them?
In this case, I'll go back a little bit and just for a second. In this case, in her case, I don't know if I can. Yeah. In her case, they just keep on repairing the same ones because each person has their own role. In
Okay.
other cases in Carnival, let's say in New Orleans, the Mardi Gras Indians sew a costume new every year. So it depends on place to place.
Okay.
So anyway, where was I here? Yeah, that's the sort of religious aspect. And again, as I went back a few times, I was invited to these religious ceremonies that it's really behind the scenes of Carnival. This is where they write the names of the relatives that they want the orishas to overlook during Carnival. And they blow on the eggs to bless them. And and you can see in the background, this is not in a fancy temple. This is just in someone's back. So here is a second little ceremony I was invited to. When I say little, it's all day. Just to showing a little bit of the inversion. You can see how what year it is by the cell phone that this guy's taking a photo of. I think it's 2007. They said "Deixa la mulher passar," which means "let the woman pass," but this is a man. So transformation, right? This is a woman dressed as a man in that same ceremony. Right? And inversion, right? The same character in before, has a cigarette. I like how he tucks the cigarette in his bodice there. So that was a lot for Brazil. And as I couldn't go to Brazil every year, I started exploring other places. This is Trinidad Tobago, the Blue Devils. So Trinidad Tobago is well known in Carnival for beadwork and bikinis and all these things that are very commercial and stereotype, but the Blue Devils are a totally different thing.
And it's easy to get access, Jason, or that took a while for them to get comfortable with you there?
Good question. The one before, that was during their dressing, and I had to get access. Right. I had to go ask someone who knew someone to take me and go early in the morning and show up and talk to them and have a drink with them. But the other two ones were on the street, frankly. So following them after they get dressed. So then that's open. But I do have that practice of going there early or having a connection in the community, either working with someone, a participant in the group, or with an ethnographer to go and be introduced to them in advance, because I tend to get richer photographs that way. Now we're in Dunkirk. When I first moved to France, I heard that there was a carnival there, and I went. And this is also gender bending. Kind of in Dunkirk, in the north of France, the men are very macho, but during Carnival they all wear dresses and skirts and face paint. But it is a very physical carnival, and you'll see in a second. I think. Did I? So you can see that's the line, and when the music stops, they kind of fight with each other and move around, and when the music changes, they keep on parading. And this is 4 straight days. Actually, it's 4 months. Every weekend from January to April, they have a carnival in different little villages. This is around Dunkirk in the north. It's crazy. They also in Dunkirk have this thing where they throw the fish. It's a fisherman's carnival, right? So they throw the herring off the main city hall. This is the mayor throwing the herring off there, and it's an honor to catch the herring. So masses gather to catch this thing, and you'll see. Pretty crazy. Now we're in Sardinia, and this is an ancient carnival. This is pagan carnival, years before Christianity, and they very much put the image of the brebis on, which is that's the sheep. So it's starting to become animist. That's really strongly connected to the animals that give them their, harvest. And every year at San Antonio in January, they have a carnival. And I will give you an idea of what that sounds like in a second. So yeah, sound and that thing is it reminds me of a Brazilian cuica, but it sounds like an animal, and these things. This guy is one of the muses that measures and cuts the cord of life. So there's a very strong connection with these sort of ancient myths.
And Jason, how long period of time is the whole body of work?
If you include Brazil, it's 15 years, probably more.
Wow.
But the European carnival is 6 years.
Sure.
Yeah, maybe 7. This is also from Sardinia. I'm going to hit play again. One thing I wanted to show too is a little behind the scenes of how they get dressed. This is really a heavy thing. They're bells, and the men are kind of submitting. They kind of have to have someone strap them in or kind of put these things on, and it's quite a physical task, to say the least. This is in Basque Country. Now, I also took a trip to Guinea-Bissau to see how African carnival was, and Guinea-Bissau was a Portuguese colony. So they have a lot of these European traditions mixed with African. For example, this mask is wood, and it takes 2 or 3 people to put it on his head. And they keep it over the years. This is an old mask, but I love it. It's interesting. Now we go to Slovenia, and Slovenia is a very rich country of carnival. And this is in one village in the mountains where they start their carnival at 4 a.m. There's no hotels before. I had to kind of crash on someone's couch. There's nowhere to eat. You have to, find a house where you can eat. It's quite intense, only for the locals, really. And the bad spirits come out and they chase the kids, and they sorry, I had to press play. These sacks that they have in their hand are full of ash. So the idea is so that they hit them with chase and hit the kids with the ash to make them dirty before becoming clean. This is the chasing. Good idea, a sense of place.
Wow.
Yeah, that's them hitting them. You'll see death later. Just to give you a little flavor of what it sounds like.
And most countries do it for 4 days, 3 or 4 days, Jason? Carnival?
It depends. Good question. Most countries do it for a couple of months of the season, and certain days are more intense. Some days are preparatory, whatever. And they do it all throughout. It's not only during the Mardi Gras that we know, that end of February. Sometimes it's in early January, mid-January, but there's a season between Day of the Kings, the 6th of January, and Lent.
Right.
Even though Carnival is a pagan thing, pre-Christian, it's been kind of subsumed in the Christian calendar. This is that same village, and what they do is they visit from house to house, and they do a song, and they get like a little snack or a drink. It's the equivalent of caroling during Carnival, and that's those guys. And mock marriages are important because Carnival is the time of marriages, and if there's no marriage in the village, they'll do a mock marriage as part of the Carnival. Marriage is symboling fertility, renewal, but these are unwed boys. Like one's the bride, one's the groom. But yeah, that's their job.
And is there partying going on, drinking and smoking and all of that? Because
largely drinking. That. Yeah. No, you don't. I don't show that because it's so stereotypical to carnival, big party. My theme is that this carnival is extremely cultural and part of their identity, part of their blood. For sure they drink. I mean, yeah, and I drink. You have to drink with them.
Tough job.
The Kurent of also of Slovenia, a different part of Slovenia. And this is the most symbolic character of carnival in the country. And what they do is they also go from house to house, right? So they ask for a little bit of money, they do a dance, and they get a little bit of food, some sweets, donuts. You know, carnival being the time that people fatten up, like Mardi Gras, right? Fatten up before the rest of the winter. So it's tradition to eat fatty, rich foods and drink. Also with this same troupe was the this character, which with the flower hat, and flowers obviously symbolizing springtime renewal.
And do you get feedback from folks, you know, you got to go here, you got to go there? Like that's the most special one. I mean,
For sure. Yeah, the more I shoot, the more I
research
have more places to go. This past year after COVID, a few years, I had an itinerary basically planned as I talk to people. Yeah. There's a lot of dualism in carnival. This is the old woman carrying a basket with a harmonica player. Some people don't see it at first, the second woman. And the bear, you know, if the bear picks you up in certain places, it may mean you might get pregnant that year. It means you're gonna have a good harvest. You know, the bear is very virile. And in this village, they only have a carnival once every 4 years. And when the bear rolls over, it's springtime, right? So it's very much like Groundhog Day, you know, or Groundhog Day. And bears are real. This is Bulgaria. The other one was Austria. Bears are a big symbol. And now also a different village in Austria, the white bear. Now we're in Bulgaria, the Kerti. These are they signify the spirits that they want to dispel. It's all spirits. This I rarely show them unmasked, but this one I show because it's the first generation they're allowing women to mask. And they said, okay, if she wants to do it, she can, as long as she can bear the weight, because it's these huge bells are maybe 40 kilos, 80 pounds in the winter, in the snow.
And is there a townskeeper of these costumes, or everyone has their own personal thing?
Depends. Some everyone has their own personal thing. Some, there's one main, you know, storage spot. Sometimes it's called a museum, but now we're in Poland, and this is Augustus, and he's the traditional, you know, chaotic character of carnival, but he has a little bit of like tradition, but also modernity on there with the ad on there. I love it. Carnival in the snow. Most people who only know Rio or a couple of Venice, they never even know there was carnival in the snow. Sorry, guys. This is in Trommen. I'm going to go back a little because this is one of my favorite guys. Don't have a lot of. Yeah, so I'm going to tell you about the next little video, which is also once every 2 years in Trommen, in the north of Italy, way up in the Alto Adige, and you just hear. Yeah, these guys are fearsome. I love them. It's a Germanic type town, and as I understand it, the town is quite conservative, but during carnival they gotta go crazy. And these guys are kind of terrorize, but they're also kind of fun. Yeah, now we're in Portugal, and I'm going to show a few of these images because for me, the carnival costume doesn't have to be ornate to be interesting, right? There's a lot of these like burlap sacks and leaves and dark things, and I think it's fascinating. Yeah, this is Basque Country, little carnival family.
But each of the costumes are traditional for that place, for that city, that country.
Largely, yeah. And there's some that people put their own spin on it,
Right.
but
Okay.
these costumes are traditional in that they illustrate a certain stereotype or character or spirit or idea that is in that village's or town's culture. For example, this is the Kramer's man in Austria. It's the stereotypical character of the itinerant salesman who used to go from hut to hut in the mountains selling, kitchenware and home items.
Mm.
Also, this one in Slovenia, it's the kind of old man, old woman, farmer stereotype.
Yeah, and Jason, is there any documentation, like anything that you could read on the birth of Carnival? Is there like a signature book?
There are a couple things. They're largely academic. The birth of Carnival is not clear. It goes back many 400 or 500 years, maybe more. But there's no one theory. Yeah, it's a bit murky. This is the bear festival, the Fête de l'Ours in France, in which they put this oil on, and they say once they put the oil on, they kind of go crazy throughout the village, and the bear represents, again, fertility and kind of these bad spirits. And it only is when the barbers, the women dressed in white, they shave at the end the bear. And this is the point of shaving, when they return back to human, and then Carnival's over.
And so at what point, Jason, were you thinking, I've got to put this into a book yourself?
Probably midway through the second year of shooting in Europe, yeah. This is in Dunkirk, and the kiss is not really sexual. It's a greeting between Carnival brothers. In this case, they don't really see each other during the year. They barely know what each other do, but during that carnival, they are very close. Now we're in Macedonia, North Macedonia, and this sort of like these old spirits. That's why he has a black face on. And with the harvest of the peppers around, makes it interesting. Also, Macedonia. This is the bride, another marriage.
So you started talking about the book, Jason.
This one, while the Brazil book, it took me a while to figure out that I wanted to do a Brazil book. This one, I felt like it was going to be a book from earlier on. And it was just a matter of understanding how deep to shoot it and learning the marketplace a little bit more and staying with it. Now we're in Greece. Also spirits. This is in January. This is the Greek New Year in early January.
And do you send these folks prints or anything like that, Jason? Thank you.
I usually send them digitally, and
Yeah.
they can use them for all of their Facebook or for their group. It depends if I have a strong relationship with the group or each individual.
Right.
But honestly, if I email them a photo, they're happy, because 99% of everyone who takes a photo of them doesn't send them anything.
Okay, good.
Did I? No, I didn't.
And all these shoots you're on your own, Jason, other than your fixer?
Sometimes I don't have a fixer, but I'm largely on my own. Yeah. Unless it's a language thing where I can't understand the language and I need someone but even if I don't speak the language, if I have a camera and I point to it and I say, "Can I take one?" 99% of the time they'll say, "Okay." It's you learn to communicate.
Yeah.
This is also in Austria, but another village that does carnival once every 5 years, so it's quite intense. Everyone thinks this guy's a Viking, but he's actually like a bear tamer of that white bear that you saw before.
He can be anything he wants.
Exactly. It's like tribal. It's very, but they take it seriously. It's a fun thing, but it's also serious. This is the Moss Man. Love him.
And are there town historians who come and want to tell you the history of these things? How does that work out?
Yeah. In this case, I met a town ethnographer who gave me some good background.
Yeah.
This is really like, I love this guy because he's masculine but also feminine, and the connection with nature. Yeah, and this horseman. There's a lot of animal symbolism here. This is in Poland. And there's a couple of them. You'll see them in action now, just for a second.
And Jason, what is the most recent that you've shot?
Coming 2023. I shot 8 carnivals.
Wow.
Knowing that I want to do it, knowing that this is the time.
Right.
So more animal costumes, headgear. But this place is another one of these Austrian villages that does carnival every 5 years. But the masks are about 100 or 200 years old because they don't take them out that often.
Right.
So they preserve them. More animals on top of heads. This is in Galicia in Spain. The chicken and the cock is very much a great symbol, and the lion and the tiger, also Galicia. This is from this year. It's in Germany. That's the goat. And the donkey. Another example of a non-decorative carnival costume that's interesting. Apologies, that one. I think I didn't cut that short enough. Sorry about that. But that's also in Galicia. They use these things called bexigas, which are the big blown up cow bladders, to not only make noise, but when they're in the parade to whack people out of the way so they don't get in their way. But you'll see these cow bladders in a couple of different regions that I've shot. That's coming up. For example, back to Brazil. So it's the same idea, but just in a different iteration.
Mm.
And this is the bear with the bexiga in Asturias in Spain.
Yeah, Jason, are there any images of you in costume?
Kind of. Yeah, not in the book though. You'll see. There's some a little behind the scenes at the end.
Okay.
There's a lot of pitchforks, a lot of farm. I mean, carnival is still largely in the ethnographic very rural. There's a lot of bulls. This one he checked to see if I was photographing, and I have one of him just masked, but I like the sort of limit between man and beast. Bulgaria. So the interesting thing after all these countries, you start to see all these common themes in different places. This is a Guinea-Bissau, another bull. Bull is a really, that symbol of virility as well. And carnival's not always clean and beautiful. The mud fight in Galicia, I'll show you guys what it looks like. So in this project, I'm not a videographer, right? But I just do little clips to give some people a flavor of what it is. Yeah, the big enormous sky, and this is Basque Country in Spain. Also Spain. Spain's very rich with carnival too. The Black Devils of Luzon. This is this year's work in Germany. I hadn't been to Germany yet for carnival. The straw men. There's definitely an ornate style to some of these. I mean, this is the headdress is probably 2 feet high. This is also this year in Italy. This is the belly and the brutti, the beautiful and the ugly. That's the beautiful. And that's the ugly. So the beautiful are the rich ones, and the ugly are the poor ones, and they have their rags and they're trying to, clean things. That's in Galicia. I just love that because the music to me is like trance, and they have this certain dance. They spin around and around and around. It reminded me a little bit of the Sufi dancers in Egypt. And this is a scary carnival. I started also exploring a little bit of modern carnival. I didn't do a lot, but this is France. This is Paris. and Marseille.
Hmm.
You know, Marseille has a big carnival with floats and these things, and I don't shoot the floats. I don't. It's not my thing. It's not for me very traditional. It's traditional, but it's quite modern. But in Marseille, they have a carnival that's artist carnival, a little bit like underground alternative carnival. That's what I photographed. And part of another modern carnival I did photograph New Orleans for those people who are asking. So that's actually, well, it looks like Mexico. It's New Orleans. And I found, besides the typical Bourbon Street or, you know, Rex or these sort of major parades, there's a lot of these sort of subcultures in Brazil, in New Orleans. This is the baby dolls. This is the purple people. And you know, the Mardi Gras Indians at the time when I photographed in 2011, they were less known. Now they're quite known because of Treme. But they do beadwork every year new by hand. That's the detail of that.
Wow.
And that's the big chief. He told me we sew by hand, and when I cut my hand with a needle, I let the blood go in the canvas. And I'm just showing you Brazil from some years ago. First, I'm going to go back to him. And keep that in your mind, the feathers. And when I showed the second image to this guy to get access, he said, "Oh, they stole our idea." And they didn't steal it. It just evolved in parallel. And also in Louisiana, I went to Cajun country and I photographed the carnival there, which is a very interesting movement of young people from New Orleans and from Cajun country going back to the roots of this very traditional carnival.
Yeah. Also, Jason, speak to us a little bit about how the book is being put together. Words, images, how many images?
I will at the end, okay?
Okay.
There's going to come a point where the neighbor is going to present the Mardi Gras with a gift. The reason behind the chicken chasing is because we're going around begging for ingredients for the gumbo for the Mardi Gras.
So yeah, this is an old, before refrigeration in the Cajun country, they used to have a Mardi Gras and everyone used to put something in the pot, in the gumbo. And it became chasing the chicken was the tradition that continued to sort of honor that. That's why I call him Chicken Man.
Very fun.
Let's sink in for a second. And this is also new work from Italy, from Schignano, near Lake Como. Very much still a farmer kind of and connection with the land. And now we're in Switzerland. This is kind of like half man, half nature. And also in Cantabria in Spain, in the north of Spain. Straw man, leaf man, all the things. And Tree Man, one of my favorites. This guy can barely move, and it's quite an amazing costume. At the end of it, of many carnivals, fire is cleansing, right? They take the doll that represents all the evil of the past year, all the bad things, and they burn it. And that usually ends the carnival for many territories.
And who is that resembling?
That is in Galicia. It's just the doll is, I forget the actual name of it, but just it represents, like, you know, all the bad things, all the negativity, all the, you know, evil stuff, and they just put it all on that and burn it. Getting towards the end. So the work, yeah, I got in Photo Lucida last year, Critical Mass Top 50, which helped the kit to get this ball rolling. And in France, I was in Geo magazine. They did a 10-page piece on this carnival project, and just showing how the spread was done. Some spreads were done.
Yeah, layout's nice.
Oh yeah, I liked it. Yeah. They did a good job with it. And I've shown the work before. This is me showing it in Lincoln Center in New York in 2013 for after the first project, Brazil project. So I had a kind of packed house and showing the work. And I've shown the work in a lot of cultural festivals before. This is in Portugal. But why do I do it? Do I do just show the work? Yes, publishing a book is great and having exhibits, but it's great meeting these characters, photographing them and seeing what the result is. A little behind the scenes and then the actual shot. And yeah, these guys too, I loved them. So it's just a little bit of the behind the scenes. And that's not quite the same moment, but that's the same character.
Right. So when do you know that it's over, Jason? You can stop sharing. When do you know, you've got enough images and, all of that?
Before I stop sharing, just to note, and I'm sure you'll tell the audience that I'm in the middle of a Kickstarter campaign, so you can just, without clicking on the link, you just go to Kickstarter and search for We the Spirits.
Great.
And I'll leave the screen on for a second while I talk,
Okay.
which is in case you want to follow my media. But I think you're going to put it in the chat, all that
Yeah,
stuff.
all that information is right now in the chat room.
Yeah.
So we will have that for you.
So sorry, what was your question, Frank? I'm
No,
sorry.
when do you know, I've got enough? It's now time to, move on.
Well, ask a photographer he has enough, that you'll never get the answer. I'm going to keep shooting it, I think, for maybe book number 2 or other projects, because it's fascinating. But I started knowing I had enough when I started getting good critical response. I do portfolio reviews every year, both in France and the States. I was in Photo Fest in Houston last year. Go to Arl a lot, Paris Photo, many things. And you get a lot of collective feedback, so that's helpful there. And then it's just your feeling. And, do you want to explore this more? Or do you want to put this, encapsulate it? What drove this, frankly, is that I got a big exhibit. It's coming out in November in Germany. It's a 3-month exhibit in a major building. It's a Richard Meier building. It's this massive, brutal place.
Where in Germany?
Ulm, U-L-M. It's a small, medium city between Munich and Stuttgart. But it's a carnival town, and they really, really support the work. And they're printing 40 big photos from this series. And so it's a good opportunity for me to have the book out for them.
Yeah, and when is that show?
November 11th, for 3 months through. It's basically through carnival season.
When? See if I can't get my in-laws to visit.
You're welcome. Yeah, please come. I'm also going to be exhibiting for those who are in the UK at WOMAD, which is a music festival. They have a theme this year, Global Carnival. So that's the end of July. That's an outdoor festival, music festival, 4 days. But they're going to print it, 1 meter by 1 meter on vinyl, huge outside.
And so tell us a little bit about the book. How many pages? How many images?
Yeah. I'll just stop the share here. 130 images, 224 pages, trim size, I don't know, 260 centimeters. So I don't know what the inches are, but not massive tome, but it's going to be more thick than big, I guess.
Right. Okay.
In working with, let me see here. Maybe I can, give me a second here. I think I might be able to. No. Yes. To do the book, I apologize. I got mixed up here. I went through a few stages of it. I did my own maquette with an editor to figure out some concepts that I liked, but that maquette actually helped me more in the portfolio review process, in the talking about the book process, than actually creating something that I wanted to show. And I, had a good connection with a publisher. In fact, I had 3 proposals outstanding. So I kind of had to sit down and figure, and it was more like choosing which publisher and to go down that road. And I went to, and when I chose this publisher called Gost, they're in the UK. They're relatively well known in the photo book world. They work with a lot of big photographers, a lot of Magnum photographers, and they're not huge. They're not Steidl or Assouline or anything, but they're quite respected in that world. And they said, yeah, we could send files back and forth, but just come. They're in London, I'm in Paris, so I went there. And if you wouldn't mind, I'm just going to share my screen again with no sound, just to show slides as virtual, not basic. Just to show one more image, and we just put photos on the floor. Start moving around, old school, printed them out. But you can see certain ones that are double. They're like they're spreads.
Yeah, they just make sense to be together. That's the best. I find when I help someone with a book or anything like that, laying it out like that is the way to go.
Yeah. So I'll just stop the share for a second without divulging too much. But it gave me also an idea of that 80,000 foot view, and you could see, the designer and the owner of the company, he said, yes, look at images by themselves, look at them with pairs, but when you have it on the floor, you get to see the overall flow of it. And he said, tell me when something stutters. Tell me when something doesn't work for you from spread to spread. And looking at a screen, for me, doesn't give you that necessarily experience.
Right. Okay. Great. So when do you think the book comes out?
Comes out in November for when for with the exhibit in Germany.
Great.
The key thing is why I'm doing the Kickstarter now to raise the funds is because, as a lot of the photographers on this know, a book publisher will say, great, I love your work. Now, how are you going to fund it? So the idea is to pre-sell the book as much as possible to be able to get a certain amount of quantity to get the funds to publish it. So I do have a publishing deal, but it's only contingent on raising the funds.
Right.
Et voila, as we say.
That's how it is. Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming back. And of course, you have a standing invitation to come back again with any other new work, or
I appreciate that. Thank you.
As this continues to grow. So, we're thrilled to have you. And, you got to promise, you come back and, like I said to everybody, all the information for Jason is in the chat room, the book, the fund me, everything is in there. So, please take a peek, go to his website, do whatever you'd like to do as far as supporting Jason. And we'll keep in touch, and you let us know how things go.
I will do, and hopefully I am at the time of this ending. I'm in France, and I will be able to. I hope I'll be awake for some question and answer at the end of this. So it feels like something we just recorded it to make sure.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Frank.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Take care.
Right. Okay, so that's Jason. And Jason is still awake. He is in Paris. If you have any questions, shout it out now. But Jason, again, actually that was pretty interesting to watch it. It was even more fun, to absorb it than thinking while you're presenting. But that's
it was a
really great. And like I say, everybody, all his information is there. It's really great work. And if you have any questions, shoot right now. Anyone has it, raise a hand or anything like that.
Frank, just quick announcement. Jason just he hit 55%. Maybe you could get that number a little bit higher by the end of the night.
Yeah, this is like the old Ed McMahon on the telephone.
Totally, it's ridiculous.
No, it's great.
I have a question.
Yes, go.
Jason, how do you get people to pull themselves out of the parade and go over to where you want them to pose for you?
I think that's a process of building the relationship and the access. I usually tend to go either the day before or a week before and I'm either introduced by someone in the group or an ethnographer working with the group. So by the time it's coming to the actual ritual on the parade, they kind of know that I'm not a random tourist, and they see Mamma Mia 6 and that I'm serious about it. And I often go where they're getting dressed. So before that, my whole goal is not to interrupt the process, right? I don't ever ask them to stop. So it's either first thing in the morning when they're getting dressed, and I see that little interstitial moment between when they're dressed and before they go, and I just ask them, humbly, can we take 1 minute? And literally every photo shoot is about 30 seconds to 60 seconds long, if I can, if I get that much, to being respectful for that. And I'm known for that, so it's not, a 3-hour separate session with lights and all that stuff. Their main thing is doing their ritual. So I'm respectful for that. So I
It's
hope that answered
usually-
the question. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good
and
question,
natural
Allison.
light, or
Sorry?
just natural light, I assume, or,
It's all natural light.
cool, thank you.
Good question, Allison. Any other questions?
And not to geek out too much, but it's all Fuji 100 slide film. So the latitude is super low. I have to be careful with the metering. But the colors are worth it.
Okay, great. I see Jamie came in, and Janice and Joyce. That's great. Well, thank you very much, Jason. And now
Thanks, guys.
from Manitoba, we have my friend Tim Smith, who is going to who's someone I just recently met in Dubai, working on a great project, and he's going to share that with us right now. So, Tim, you share the screen, and off we go.
Okay, sounds good. Everyone can hear me, I hope. So thank you
Yes.
so much for having me. That was absolutely beautiful work. And I do have a question for Jason later, just about how he funds being able to travel all over to all these different carnivals and festivals, and that's incredible. But okay, so I'm going to start sharing my screen, and we're going to see how this goes. Oh, whoops, hang on one sec. Forgot to actually share this screen before hitting play here. So let's do this. Okay, hopefully my million tabs open won't give everyone else too much anxiety.
Okay.
And we can go here. And okay, how does that look?
Yeah, you look great.
So you can see stuff.
Good.
Okay, so my name's Tim Smith. I have the most boring name in photography, and I live in Manitoba, Canada. So I basically live where that red dot is, in a small city called Brandon, of about 50,000 people in southwestern Manitoba, kind of right in the middle of Canada. I grew up in Winnipeg, which is Manitoba's biggest city. It's about 800,000 people, and I grew up like a real city slicker. No real connection to farming or the prairies, that kind of thing. But relatively early into my career, I ended up in Brandon, and kind of rural life has really been my bread and butter over the last 15, 16 years, I guess. When I was growing up in Canada, in Winnipeg, I remember this book by Henry Riplinger called If You're Not From the Prairie. He did these beautiful paintings for the book, and it was kind of like a poetic book about prairie life. And I just remember getting the book from the library and just being fascinated by these kind of like romantic, idealistic scenes of prairie life. And for whatever reason, I always kept that in my head. Even though this wasn't my life, it wasn't something that I really connected with, other than maybe seeing bits and pieces of the prairies out on Sunday drives with my family, or traveling with friends to go skateboarding when I was a little bit older. But I really, really connected with it for whatever reason. And through that, I really connected with, in my career, finding stories in your own backyard. That's really been kind of my thing. And I just want to show some other photographers who I think do beautiful work like that. Tara Fondrice in the Ozarks just captures daily life in the Ozarks so beautifully. Darren Calabrese in Atlantic Canada, who just came out with a beautiful book called Leaving Good Things Behind. Just came out, it's gorgeous. He captures life in Atlantic Canada gorgeously. Amber Bracken out of Alberta, who has 2 World Press Awards and has documented stories all over, but incredible work just within her home communities and her home province. Pat Kane, who documents life in Northern Canada. again, more beautiful work. I'm really attracted to this kind of work because it's so accessible. You don't need big budgets. You don't need to go halfway around the world. It's just right there in front of you. Melissa Renwick, a photographer on Vancouver Island, also does absolutely gorgeous work. So these are just a few of the people whose work I really admire. And just to give a bit of background before I get into my Hutterite work. So I took a job at the Brandon Sun newspaper in 2007 here in Manitoba. I went from a big daily paper, the Edmonton Sun up in Edmonton, Alberta, to a small daily in a small city. You know, from what I'm used to, it's barely considered a city at 50,000 people. And there's a variety of reasons for why it made sense for me to move and take that job and that. But one of the things that I really wanted to do is find stories that weren't necessarily being told, and where when I went out to tell them, I was kind of the only photographer there. So I started documenting rural life a lot and just life in the prairies. I really love just kind of cruising, driving the grid roads, and finding communities, First Nations, Hutterite colonies, ghost towns, etc., areas that that I haven't explored before, and going back again and again until I can find kind of a story or a photo that connects. So this is just kind of some of my broader work documenting prairie life. There's a lot of events, obviously, throughout the summer: rodeo, powwow, all the different small town fairs. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Tim, there's something on the bottom that we're all seeing.
Oh, the sharing thing, is that it?
No, yeah, right there.
There, boom.
Now it's gone.
Okay. So now, am I still sharing though?
Yes.
Okay, so that's
Yeah,
all.
now it's perfect.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about
That's all right.
that. Yeah, so I just kind of try and document all aspects of prairie life. Different rodeo stuff. This project I find kind of like, I don't necessarily have a grand plan to it. It's just a lot of it is stuff that I just come across, and then I just kind of add to as I go, which kind of works well with my short attention span and kind of how I operate.
You know,
Just
it's interesting, Tim, to hear you say that, like, this is where I live, and I'm going to find stories where I live. You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
we're always searching. But yeah, that's a real, something we should all sort of mark in our heads, that there are stories everywhere. Just keep on looking, right? And waiting. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it came partly out of necessity, partly just out of, when we moved here, we had a young child, and it was harder to go abroad or further afield to tell stories, and then of course with financing that and things as well, it just made sense to find stories that I could return to again and again, and to be able to do it without a lot of effort, I guess, and planning. I just love that I get to be in kind of a neck of the woods where I'm telling stories that there's no one else really out here telling stories from this part, from southwestern Manitoba. So it means a lot to me because it's my home, and that to be able to find these stories and to be able to bring them to places like Dubai and South Korea and Germany and Austria, and share them with the rest of the world.
And you're born right there?
I was born in Ottawa, but I grew up in Manitoba, and I've lived most of my life in Manitoba. So obviously farming is a big industry here, and every fall I cover harvest. And yeah, this is just a little glimpse of life on the prairies. So here's the work that I'm most known for, I guess, and that I've been lucky to get some traction with. And I've spent the last 15 years documenting the Hutterites of Manitoba. and occasionally a bit further afield from Manitoba as well. The Hutterites are Anabaptist communal groups, often compared to the Mennonites or the Amish, and they did come out of the Radical Reformation in the 1500s, Europe, Northern Austria, Germany, and they share some similarities to the Mennonites or the Amish, but they are also their own distinct community. They live communally. They are one of the most successful models for communal living in modern Western society. And they live in colonies of anywhere between, typically between, I'd say 60 to 150 people throughout Western Canada and the Northwestern United States.
And how far back do they go?
To the 1500s.
1500, wow.
Yeah. So they began in the 1500s in Europe and slowly migrated further east across Europe and into Russia, fleeing persecution throughout the centuries, and then ultimately fleeing Russia for the Dakotas in the United States. And during the First World War, they were persecuted in the US because of their pacifist beliefs and because they spoke German. There was a lot of distrust and they refused to join the war effort. So a few of them were actually jailed for resisting. So the Hutterites moved en masse up into Canada. And then after conscientious objector status kind of came in to play, and there was kind of room for pacifist beliefs and that, then they did move back into the United States as well. And if you see on this map, so this shows all the colonies that exist in North America and essentially in the world, because this is the only place they exist. And the three colors represent the three different sects of the Hutterites. So the sect that I spend the majority of my time photographing is the Schmiedelite sect in the green there, that's in Manitoba, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota.
And is there anything major, like what is the difference between the three groups?
The biggest difference between the Hutterites and the Amish and the Mennonites would be that the Hutterites live communally. They're the only of the three of those three Anabaptist groups that truly live communally, where all goods are shared and all work and labor and that is shared amongst all the members of the colony. Another big distinction between some groups like the Old Order Mennonites and the Amish is that the Hutterites don't shy away from technology, and they embrace technology that makes any of their work more productive. So they have, as you'll see, some of the newest and fanciest farm equipment, manufacturing equipment. They increasingly use the internet and smartphones and that as part of their business. So they're very technologically adept.
And I have to say a thank you for putting in the map. It's always great to see it. A lot of times, we get presentations and we're talking about different places. Having a map like that just clarifies a lot.
For sure. So that circle there, you can see around Brandon, that's the city I live in. And then you can see how many communities are around where I live. So the overwhelming majority of this work that I'm sharing comes from within an hour to 2 hours tops from where I live. So when I talk about photographing in my own backyard, it's really photographing close to home.
And Tim, is there any apprehension of you shooting them, or is this built over years of relationship building? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why I've spent 15 years doing that, is because each new community I go to, it's starting from scratch to an extent. Now I'm fortunate that a lot of people know me and can vouch for me, and so people kind of know a bit more what to expect. But it does take that time to build the connections and to know who's comfortable with being photographed, who's not comfortable, get to know kind of the feel of the community and the vibe, and be able to kind of react to that. This is a photo from the Arab Dearborn colony, just to give an example of how some of the colonies are set up. The big building in the middle there is both the communal dining room and kitchen where everyone eats together, as well as the church where everyone prays together. So the church is both physically and metaphorically kind of at the heart of the community.
You see the similarity straight away with the kibbutz. The kibbutz is similar that in that way as well.
I've heard that a lot too. I'm not extremely familiar with their groups, but I've heard a lot of comparisons. So just a couple examples of getting involved in and getting to know the communities. So this is Jonathan, the German teacher, sending me for a drink at one of the field days a couple years ago, 5 or 6 years ago.
That'll ingratiate you with the community, right? Get dunked every once in a while, and they love you.
Yeah, they seem to love it. And then this is from down in Montana, and it's me almost getting trampled by a cow here during branding. So
Brandon.
One of the reasons that I've spent so much time on this project is because there's a lot of apprehension in the community about simplistic, reductionist narratives about their society. And I've really wanted to avoid that so that I don't perpetuate those same stereotypes. I think we as humans, we struggle with complex narratives, and we try to reduce things to a simplistic explanation. And I think there's a lot of great reasons behind why we do that, but it also causes problems when we try to reduce a people or a community or a complex situation to a simple narrative. And the Hutterites, just like any group of people, can't be reduced to just simple narratives. So I do try to spend as much time as possible to tell as broad and as in-depth a story as possible. This is from the kids' dining room at Dearborn Colony. Kids between the age of 5 and 15 eat separately from the adults in the Essenschule, which basically translates to eating school. And it allows the parents to kind of dine freely without having to be worried about interruptions from the kids and things like that. So the German school teacher is in charge of minding the kids while they dine. So they're just saying grace after lunch, or prayer, I should say. This is Laura cleaning up. There are very defined gender roles amongst the communities, and it's interesting to see differences in the 3 different sects and how that changes and that, but it's pretty similar across the sects, where there are fairly defined gender roles when it comes to the work that the women do versus the work that the men do. And girls are taught young that they're expected to clean up after lunch and things like that, while the boys go off to play.
And Tim, I mean, over the years, you're documenting this. Is there a point where you get there and you recognize there's something going on? There's some type of a conflict happening. Two kids want to leave, and they want to go to the big city. Like, how does that play into everything that you're doing? And I only ask you that question in the context that you're going there for so many years,
right?
That you would feel that.
Yeah,
Have
absolutely.
you counted that?
Absolutely. I have a photo of someone who has left, actually a couple of people, but I do have a photo I'll be sharing later of someone in the outside world. And sometimes I get a sense of young people who I probably have an idea are going to leave. Other times it comes as a complete surprise. And then sometimes they end up back at the colony after having left for a while, and that ends up as a surprise too. But I absolutely get to know kind of the narratives and the stories, and in addition to like all the great relationships and things like that, and how dating plays out and things like that. Sometimes you get to know the conflicts in the communities as well.
And are there instances where someone comes to you and asks you, how is it there? How is it out there? I mean, are you somewhat of a, this bridge to the outside world to them in any way?
Not really anymore, because they are so well connected. They for anyone who leaves, they typically go into a diaspora of other Hutterites who have left the community. So they're fairly adept. They get hired easy because they're known as good workers. They move to Brandon or to Calgary or to Winnipeg or wherever, and they typically end up moving in with other Hutterites that have left the community. And it's not unexpected that particularly like younger Hutterites may leave for a while. It's kind of built into their system to be accepted that a certain percentage are going to want to know, what the outside world is like and try their hand out there. And a lot of them end up coming back as well. The pull of having everything taken care of for you, from not having to worry about rent, what you're going to eat that night, what you're going to do if you get sick. It's a pretty strong pull for people, especially if you've grown up in that environment.
Right.
This here is Junia at the Colony School way back in 2010. You can see the really old TV there, but she's watching The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. She had read the book, and a sympathetic English teacher had brought in the movie for her to watch because TVs are kind of frowned upon in colony homes. And that now, because of smartphones and connection to the internet, and that those lines are a lot more blurred. It's a lot more easy to to get social media and to watch mainstream media and that from home. Farming's a big aspect on a lot of colonies, especially in Manitoba, as is kind of the colony garden. They grow the overwhelming majority of the food that they consume. They grow and raise themselves. So this is the women picking garlic in the colony garden.
And do you have like what is the window for you to come? Is it like 1 week you let them know, 2 weeks out? How does that work? What's the logistics?
Every colony is different. So like this colony, Dearborn, a lot of the time I just show up. Other colonies, depending on the relationship I have and how well I know them. If I don't know them as well, then I'm going to give more of a heads up. If I see that an event is happening or something's happening that I might be interested in, then I'll reach out and typically to the minister or the kind of the secretary colony boss for the colony and ask permission. Unless it's something happening with a specific individual, then I may reach out to them first, but often then they'll direct me to the minister just to ensure that it's okay. So a lot of portraits.
Great.
I love the aspect of time, and I talked about this in Dubai and in other presentations, in photographing a community, because it's really like this secret added layer that just makes your work so much stronger. I don't consider myself an amazing photographer. The great thing about time is you have a chance for redos and going back again and again and again. But it's like, it's such a simple thing. It's all I have to do is keep showing up, and it adds this extra layer of strength to my imagery. So I guess that's kind of like a tool that I use in my work.
So Tim, when you say that extra layer, is that just over time you're garnishing more and more access?
Yeah, it's a bunch of things. It's I get more access, I get more intimacy because of that access. So, I spend a lot of time just kind of waiting around, visiting and waiting for things to happen. But because I've put in that time, there's more likelihood that interesting photos are going to unfold in front of me. And then on top of that, I get to show communities as they evolve over time, kids growing up, adults getting married and having their own kids, celebrations, tragedies, things like that. So it just adds these extra elements. This is branding in Montana. So this is a little bit further afield from where I live. But at a colony down there, it's absolutely organized chaos, but it's pretty wild. Another one from branding. This is Bethany in the colony garden after planting cucumbers during a rain shower. She had left the colony at one point and then came back. You can actually see a tattoo poking out of her sleeve there. And she has since left the colony again, and she lives just outside of Brandon. Chantal and her niece.
Yeah. So Tim, the ones that leave, is
Mhm.
there like a goodbye interview? Like, do you get it? Can you get a sense of why they leave, why they come back? What's the dilemma for them?
Usually it's just there's some aspect of colony life that they're not happy with, or they're curious and interested in the outside world. They don't want to adhere to the traditions or the rules of the colony, and they want to explore, making their own money, living in the outside world, not having a defined position within the community. And if they do end up coming back, then it's typically because either they miss family, friends, they want to carry on with the community, the pull of the communal nature and being taken care of is pretty strong.
And are they easily accepted back? Is there a penance to pay? I mean, like, and when they leave, are they outcasts? How does that work? And these may be questions you don't know the answers, but I think everyone's thinking on these lines.
Sure. Yeah, they're not outcasts. Like people will leave and then they will come back and for visits and that. Tradition is typically that if you've left, you need to ask the minister to come back and visit. It's more of a formality, but they wouldn't want someone leaving and then coming back every weekend and taking all of the advantages of colony life without, say, putting into it. And that, but of course, young people come back and visit family, and relatives come back and visit family, and often come home for like Christmas and birthdays and Easter and things like that. So it's people leaving is very built into the structure of Hutterite life. So it's not an unexpected thing, although it is. I know it's a powerful emotional thing for a young person deciding to leave, and often they leave without telling anyone, maybe some close friends or people in the outside world that have already left and things like that. They often leave without telling anyone because they know that if they tell their parents, community members, they're going to be urged to stay, so they find it easier to leave and then announce that they've left.
And do they leave in pairs? Do they leave solo, or there's no
It can happen in pairs or groups. It can happen solo.
right? Okay.
Any and all. Here's a good example of what I love about how time adds to stories. So this photo is from way back in 2010, and this is Michelle kind of playfully tugging on her brother Simeon's suspenders while having an after-school snack. It's a very imperfect photo from early in my project. A lot of this I've kind of learned as I go, but I just love the moment in it. But so that's Michelle in 2010. And then this is Michelle again in 2015 on the colony, about a year before she left the colony. Just a portrait with her headphones that she often had in when she was doing work. And then this is beside that is a portrait of her here in Brandon in 2020, a year or two after she had left the colony. And she continues to live here in Brandon. She goes to university, works full time, and then still goes home to visit family at Dearborn and that. But you can kind of just see like the differences over time and being able to kind of follow someone's life and someone's journey like that.
Yeah, and somebody leaves. Is there a historian who registers that so and so left? And it becomes part of the history of the space. And is that sort of documented in any way?
That's a good question, and actually, I don't know that. From what I've never heard of that in terms of that. They do have an app called Members that they use to keep track of everyone in each community, and that, like, when I say keep track, just like it just lists like contacts and that for getting a hold of each other in each community. So I suppose if someone, like if a family left in that, then they may on the latest update for that community, it may not list them in that, but I don't think there's any kind of genealogical or historical marking of that, if that makes sense.
Like an exit interview or,
Right. Yeah. No, nothing like that I've heard of.
That actually, could be something from a documentary standpoint of, sort of like now we're going back and, the last survivors of the Holocaust, They're
Mm.
interviewing all those people. You know,
Right.
that may be something, you know, from your standpoint, that could be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I am kind of interested in the group that, or the group of Hutterites that have left, and especially the ones I know, and then talking to them about the reasons why they left, or if they end up coming back. Someone I know just returned to the colony after a year or two away from the colony, and that, so it's always interesting to hear their stories.
And for you, you know, speaking to someone who's left,
Hmm.
right? I mean, how does that feel to you emotionally? Is that so? Are you betraying any side of the equation? You know, the minister who's running the place, and now you're speaking to this young person, you know, or a parent who's still there. You know, do they actually debrief you that you've spoken to the kid? What do they
No,
think? None of that.
no, not at all. No. That I don't know. Maybe they just know that I'm the wrong guy to talk to. Sometimes it's pretty funny. The Hutterite, what do you call it? Like they're very connected to what's going on at other colonies and stuff. So there are some interesting times like where I'll show up at a colony, and then all of a sudden, you know, people from other colonies I know will be texting and saying, "What are you doing at Crystal Spring Colony?" Or you know, because they find out so quickly. Or when I was in Montana, you know, there's people in Manitoba messaging. I hadn't told anyone that I was going to Montana, and then all of a sudden, communities here know, because it just passes through the grapevine so quickly, which is
Mm.
pretty funny. So a lot of time people will ask me, "Oh, what's new at Acadia Colony or another colony that I may have visited?" If they know that I'm going somewhere, they'll ask about people that I met
So
and stuff. But it's more out of just a friendly curiosity.
that's called gossiping.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I can do it.
Everybody gossips, right? There you go. Universal.
Exactly. So this is Susanna. I took photos of Susanna last fall. I wanted to meet her because she, at the time, was the oldest living Hutterite at a few months over 100. So actually, it was December that I photographed her. There was a couple of hit and misses getting together with her, but I just wanted to make a couple of photos of her and meet her because, as the current oldest living Hutterite, she had a pretty interesting history. She has 52 grandchildren, 154 great grandchildren. She'd been alive almost, you know, since when the Hutterites had moved into Canada. So she had an amazing wealth of knowledge and history. So it was great to meet her and photograph her. In March of this year, Susanna passed away. So I reached out to the colony, and I've been to Hutterite funerals before. But they were for more tragic circumstances. And while I was welcome to attend and not, I wasn't welcome to photograph, which obviously I understood. It's a very emotional time, and it's a really hard thing to ask for access to. But when Susanna died, I knew that her funeral was as much a celebration as anything else. You couldn't have asked for a better life. She had lived peacefully and sharp right up until the end and died peacefully. So I reached out to the colony, and I asked if I could respectfully come and document the wake and the funeral. And after a bit of back and forth with the minister, they agreed. And so in March, I went out and did a lot of photos and video and documented everything around the wake and the funeral. So this is from the morning of the funeral, just singing in Susanna's home around her casket with family and friends. And then this is just bringing the casket to the church for the funeral. Another great thing about spending a long time on a project and getting to know a community is that they let you know about things. And so this was from way back in 2010 as well. And I woke up to my phone buzzing at like 3:30 in the morning. And I'm a very light sleeper, so anything wakes me up. I heard the text, thought to myself, who the heck is texting me at 3:30 in the morning? Tried to go back to sleep, but the phone buzzed again. So I woke up and I had multiple texts from people saying, "Hey, Tim, just wanted to let you know our wood shop is burning to the ground." So it was the first snowfall of the year. I rushed out completely unprepared. I threw on rubber boots with no socks. It made no sense, and just jumped in my car, drove the 20 minutes. I was sure that I was going to miss everything. But when I came down into the valley where the colony is, I could just see the glow from the highway. And so I managed to get there while they were trying unsuccessfully to battle the fire. So these are a few photos from that.
Yeah. So Tim, I mean, on some level, you become a historian. You know, when the history is written, right? You know, you have documentation of the kids and the fires and things like that. Is there an archive that they're creating with your imagery, or do you like how does that work, or is that even being facilitated?
I wouldn't say that that's an interesting question, actually, because it's something that I want to bring up with a few colonies that do keep extensive archives. There is a colony that keeps a pretty extensive archive that has archived aspects of my published work. So when my work was published in the New York Times and different magazines and things like that, they have aspects of that. But in terms of, I would love to see a Hutterite colony have access to being able to kind of take care of the whole archive, and that's just something that I haven't gotten around to discussing yet. But I would love to see that, because my archive over 15 years is like 7 terabytes worth of images. It's ridiculous, because for every image I'm happy with, I take several thousand terrible photos. But there's a lot of stuff that will never see the light of day, but could be important just for, like, it's important to the people who I photograph. And I do share a lot of the work with anyone who asks, because I want them to be able to have those mementos, if for nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, in each space, is there like an historian for this community or that, or somebody? I mean, or is that something that writing up a proposal to them? Is there someone that you should select to be the community historian for that reason?
There's definitely people who are very interested in the historical aspect and kind of the historian role. So there are people that I know in the community, specifically in Manitoba, who kind of take on that role, or who are interested in that. So there are people that are definitely worth talking to that I know. This is Rachel taking her Canadian citizenship. Dating plays out very similar in the Hutterite world to the outside world, but when bride and groom get married, the bride always marries to the groom's colony. So Rachel's from South Dakota. She had married to Dearborn Colony in Manitoba, and a few years later took her Canadian citizenship and became a Canadian citizen. There are young Hutterite women just socializing on a hill overlooking the colony. This is Deborah and Derek's, basically her goodbye party before going down to North Dakota to the colony the next day where she was getting married at. It's pretty funny. I wasn't sure what to expect when I was invited to show this work at the Exposure Photo Festival in Sharjah, United Arab Emirates. And I wasn't sure if any of my photos of pigs being slaughtered, etc., would be too graphic, or if anything would be censored. The only photo that was taken out of my presentation was this photo, because it's a public display of affection, and those are frowned upon in the UAE. So it's just so interesting, the differences in different places. But here they are being egged on into a kiss. And then this is the following day.
That really was a beautiful photograph to catch those young girls. And go back if you could. No, the next one. Kiss.
Oh, here?
No, but like the innocence of these other girls, witnessing the kiss.
Right, yeah.
There is something, I mean, like, it's a very compelling photograph.
Yeah, the blush and the shyness.
I mean, try to set that up. Forget it, right? I mean, that is a beautiful image. Like that girl in the powder blue in the back. Like,
Mm.
oh man, like, wow, look, they're kissing. That's a great, it's just phenomenal. Really great shot.
Yeah, and now she's married. Like it just,
Oh, yeah.
it shows the passage of time and stuff too. So,
Yeah.
and then this is the very following day, and this is Deborah saying goodbye to members of her community before packing up to leave for North Dakota. Obviously, she's marrying the love of her life. She's very excited, but it's also she's leaving the only home she's ever known, and there's a bit of fear and trepidation, and just that sorrow, and that so it's kind of like a hard, sad moment before what's going to be a weekend of joy and excitement with getting married.
And that's a universal photograph, right? I mean,
Hmm. Yeah,
everyone leaves their home to another home, right? I mean, that's
exactly. Yep.
the
This
suit.
is the portrait of Chantel in her wedding dress. This is John and Ruth saying grace or saying a prayer after lunch. Ruth had pretty severe dementia at this point, was non-communicative, and John spent most of his day taking care of her. But it was really beautiful and tender just watching how he took care of her. Here he is tucking her into bed. And just like these are the kind of moments that it's just an absolute privilege to be around for and to be allowed into. I really love that. I really love being able to have those connections with these people. Morning coffee, tradition, kind of like at 9 o'clock or 9:30, everything stops for coffee in the morning, and then same thing at 3 in the afternoon. Everyone stops and has coffee and a snack, and so it's the best times to show up at the colony.
Mm.
This is Tom, the minister at Dearborn, just eating alone. He kind of subscribes to that kind of old school traditional idea that the minister eats apart from the rest of the community. So while everyone else eats communally, he takes his meals alone at home. Some ministers have kind of foregone that now and see that as outdated and that, but other ministers still stick to it.
And Tim, how hard is it for someone to come into the community as an individual or a family? Like, any idea of the process of that?
Like to join?
Yeah.
It's difficult. It's not unheard of, and outsiders have joined the communities, but it's both difficult. It's rigorous in that the community wants to ensure that anyone who joins is serious about joining and that they know what to expect. And it's difficult in a lot of ways. It's a culture that you have to be born into to really understand, because it's so different from the outside world in terms of the communal aspects and how things are run, and having less individualistic nature, I guess, and being part of something broader. But it does happen, and there are outsiders that have joined communities, but it's not like an everyday thing. This is Olivia after breaking her leg sledding. At the time, she told me that she wasn't going to go sledding again until she was an old lady, but she's happily back sledding. All her friends signed her cast. Just the colony swimming hole. I love a good swimming hole. This is just a little bit of video of some fun colony life.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, I mean, like a lot of a photographer's life is spent in self-doubt over their work and kind of how it matches up to other photographers or within the broader context of the world and stuff like that. What I hope that my work shows in terms of how I stick to photographing stories in my own backyard, and that is that you don't have to travel halfway across the world. I mean, it's amazing to do that. There's amazing stories everywhere, and I love seeing work that photographers are doing all over. But if you don't have the means to do that, you can absolutely tell beautiful stories from your backyard and be able to share them with a broader world and find interest throughout the world in that. It's from Field Day at Treesbank Colony, just some girls playing on an inflatable slide. This is Nevada Waldner at Maple Grove Colony. She has an American Girl style doll. The dolls are, quite popular among young girls in the communities, but some relatives sewed Hutterite clothing for the doll. So now she has, this connection to the outside world, but it's made to reflect, the life that she knows, and she can find connection in that representation. Andre doing some fishing.
You know what you've done, Tim, a really phenomenal job of just making this all so, with the access that you have, making it all so normal. Right? Like you've pulled back the curtain to show us, because I think, I'll speak for myself, like there's always a little bit of mysteriousness behind, these types of communities. And if we didn't know, this is a summer camp in Monticello,
Right.
there's really no difference to it. You've done a beautiful job with your access and your eye to capture beautiful moments. And, this of course is a great image here.
Yeah, I really try hard to show just as wide a breadth of what community life is like, and just kind of in addition to the big events, and that just the daily life, and just show the beautiful aspects, sometimes the not so glamorous aspects of colony life, but to show it as broadly and as truthfully as possible. And I think that's a big benefit of being able to do it for so long, that I can show a broader truth to their community. So this photo is from Spring Valley Colony, and it kind of flies in the face of everything I talk about in terms of building connection and that, because I actually don't know this community very well. And I've only photographed, maybe 2 or 3 times in that community, and really kind of came across this photo out of sheer luck. I hadn't planned on being at that community that night. Was just kind of passing by, saw kids playing on these bales from like way far away. Just something caught my eye. Rushed to get permission from the minister. It was raining at the time, and then after he agreed and I ran back to the bales, the rain kind of stopped and this rainbow came out, and just kind of that luck. It's, our job is all about putting ourselves in the space for opportunities to happen, and 90% of the time we strike out, but the more we do it, every once in a while we get lucky.
And I have to say, Tim, the only time I yell at a photographer, and you've just did it 3 times in one image, there is no such thing as luck. You guys are working it, you're working it, you ran back, whatever it is. There's someone, I don't know who it was, a couple of weeks ago, said, "Oh, I was lucky here, I was lucky there."
Right.
That's being a committed,
for sure.
photographer.
It's about creating the opportunities for that luck to come through. And a lot of the time the luck's not going to come through, but if you create the opportunities, then you're going to get those kind of magical moments.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is an example too of just putting yourself in the situation. This was from last year, and I was out at Dearborn Colony for a going away party for a bride, something I've been to many times. Didn't expect to really photograph anything new or different. I was just mostly going out there for the fun of it and to celebrate with everyone. And then, like as it was getting dark, an MMA fight breaks out between a couple young friends on the lawn next door. So just gave me something interesting and different to photograph at an event where I figured I wouldn't see anything different than what I was used to.
So Tim, you're making the money the money on this when you sell them to a publication. That's where the revenue comes from, this body of work.
Yeah, and I would not call
Yeah,
I wouldn't call it too much revenue. I mean,
right.
this is obviously a labor of love, and I'm lucky that after this period, this is the work that people know me for. That's why I believe so much in long-term projects, and photographing something you're passionate about. This is the work that thankfully gets to bring me to festivals in Australia and Dubai and South Korea, and I'll be exhibiting this work in Germany and Austria in the fall again. And so I'm really lucky for that. And I love those opportunities that I get to travel with this work now. But I'm absolutely supporting myself through traditional photojournalism, working for a daily newspaper, freelancing for a whole variety of clients on top of that, and then doing this work in my own time when I get time. And making a bit of money off selling prints and licensing it to publications and exhibiting it and things like that.
It's interesting that the tattoos, right? That's something that is okay because being from Brooklyn, I can't be further away. Imagining that the tattoos would not be something that they would like, but it's totally fine for the young boys to have it.
I wouldn't say it's totally fine. It would be frowned upon. This one here, this woman has a temporary tattoo. It's like a henna tattoo that she had drawn on her leg. It's still something that she wouldn't normally want to draw a lot of attention to, because she might just get a bit of a talking to from the minister in that. But she graciously showed me it for the picture, and I just don't identify her in the picture, even though it probably wouldn't be a big deal. But then I know several people who have left the colonies, gotten tattoos in the outside world, and then eventually come back to the colony and they may get a talking to about it and that, but it's as long as they're not, like showing them off everywhere and that, it's not that big a deal. This was during the pandemic, of course. So Elaine from Green Acres Colony getting a vaccination. The pandemic really stopped this project for about a year or so, for the most part, just because we just didn't know what to expect. And the last thing I wanted to do was bring anything onto the colonies and be a cause of people getting sick. But once vaccinations came about and stuff, that I was able to start returning. Hockey on some of the colonies. These women used to play in a yearly charity game against a town team, that plays as part of a league and plays hockey all year. And these Hutterite women would get together maybe once and practice, and then play against this team, raise money for all sorts of great charities. It became a big event. It was also really controversial amongst some of the colonies. But they were amazing hockey players, and they won most of their games in the 10 years that they played this charity game. They were incredible.
That's offsides.
Right, yeah. This is at the Manitoba Summer Fair in Brandon. So some of the women from Green Acres Colony came out with some Syrian refugees to show them a night at the fair, and I just made some photos there. Hadassah swimming with Kahlua, so just a little bit of the horse lifestyle. You see more like horse life in kind of the Alberta, Montana kind of ranching colonies, but there are a few colonies in Manitoba that work with horses and that.
So Tim, it must be like some of the places you keep on going back to, they see you arrive and some people must get excited. Oh, Tim's here, and we're going to be doing this today. Why don't you come? And you must have that kind of relationship by now as well in some places.
For sure. Or if I'm away for a while, then people will be kind of like, where you been? And we have to catch up and stuff like that too. And I am lucky, especially now, in a lot of ways, smartphones and connectivity, and the fact that everyone has a camera in their pocket and everyone is taking pictures, and a lot of people follow me on social media and stuff like that. It has made it a bit easier because more people reach out about things that are going on and give me ideas, and I can kind of follow glimpses into their lives as well and get my own ideas.
Yeah.
Just the last couple here. So these are flowers on a grave at Dearborn Colony after a funeral.
So they have their own cemetery, Tim?
Yeah, they do. They have their own cemeteries that they care for and where they bury their dead. And they go through very similar traditions in terms of wakes and funerals to the outside world with kind of their own spin on things. And this was after a funeral and the women placing flowers on top of the grave.
Yeah, Tim, that's an interesting thing. When does it become, how does that line get blurred? The outside world versus their world. Isn't it just the world? Just because, and I have to say, the reason I bring that up is because you've given us this kind of access where you've broken down that wall, and that outside world versus their world. You've sort of made it seamless in their natural way of living.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tricky question. I mean, that's a question that colonies are constantly navigating, especially these days, in terms of which aspects of the outside world to let in, both for their economic survival, and that without allowing in too much and maintaining their separation from mainstream society and those important separations that have kind of guided them through the last 5 centuries and kept their culture alive in that. So colonies are really navigating that, and it's a tricky thing on deciding how much to let in, because once you let stuff in, it's really hard to shut it back out. And especially it was kind of easy in some ways during some of the whole horrible periods of their history when they were being persecuted, because they would just throw up the walls, both physically and kind of metaphorically, and become very insular and protective because they had to hold on to their way of life. But during periods of peace and prosperity and that, it's easy to kind of let down those guards, and then you can have kind of more of a seep in of the outside world that can be detrimental to some of their traditions and that. So that's, especially during this period right now, that's something that colonies are really navigating.
So for some of those colonies, COVID in a way was a blessing, in that the outside world couldn't come in because they were afraid themselves, or not.
They were really connected to the outside world in some ways during COVID, to be honest. COVID hit a lot of colonies really hard, and just like it did everywhere else. And yes, there was a bit more separation, but it even meant separation from communities, like not being able to visit families at other colonies and stuff. So it was difficult on them as it was on us. But they also had a lot of connections to the outside world because of a lot of colonies were doing amazing things like sewing masks and 3D printing visors and building cots for some of the field hospitals and stuff in the US and that. So they were really active in helping some of the COVID fight, I guess.
Okay.
They're often very generous and what's the word? Not philanthropic, but they do a lot of charity work, whether it's donating vegetables to the local food banks. They donate blood in droves, like they're the highest blood donors in Manitoba, probably in Western Canada. We've had several floods here throughout the last decade, and they're always out sandbagging, helping. If there's a fire at the neighbors or something, they do pitch in and help out a lot within the broader community while still trying to maintain their own separation from the community. And then this last one here, this is just Edwin waiting for the call to church. Just kind of a nice quiet image as it started to get dark over the colony, and just a nice quiet closer. So that's kind of a broad overview of my Hutterite work from the last 15 years. This is kind of like my info for if you want to see more of that work. And yeah, thank you so much. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah. Any thought of a book or, in that vein, Tim?
Sure, yeah, hang on. I'll stop sharing here for a sec. Yeah, the book is my kind of one of my big focuses this year is finally sorting out putting together a book. So I've been in some discussions with some publishers, got some meetings with agents, and kind of just working on that next step and finding the time to put that together. But now I'm at a point finally after years of kind of like going back and forth, but I'm at a point where I'm happy with my body of work and could put out a book. And like I said to you tomorrow, like I said to you earlier, if I stopped photographing this project tomorrow, I'd be happy with where it's at.
Right. Great. Yeah. Anyone have any questions? I have to tell you, the chat room is filled with, a lot of praise. Everyone really loving it. And you could, after all these years, stop.
Like, you're asking if I could?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like you're part of that, part of these communities in a real way.
It would be hard. I mean, I think I could stop photographing. I would always want to go back to certain communities and visit. And, a lot of these people are my friends and, I care about their lives. I'm invested in their lives and I'll always want to catch up. It would be hard as a photographer to do that and not bring a camera and that, but I also do kind of, as much as I love keeping photographing too, it takes up a lot of time, and I'm kind of excited to do other projects as well. So it's really it's
Good.
it's a project of convenience and location. So as long as I'm here, as long as I'm in Manitoba or somewhere where there's Hutterite communities, I'm sure I will continue to photograph it in some way, shape, or form. Just maybe not as intensely as I've done throughout the last 15 years.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, it makes sense. Jamie has a nice comment in here. Your work shows the value of trust in the people you are photographing. That's never easy. Very poignant. That's very true.
That's
Very.
Yeah, that's important to me that they see that they're represented accurately in that. So, the biggest compliment I can get is from members of the community. If they see themselves in the work and feel that I'm doing it justice, then I'm happy with that.
Great.
I
Yeah.
have a question.
Yeah, go. Hey, Lane.
I just wondered the difference between the men and the women. I mean, it seems like the women were more open to being photographed based on the amount of images that you shot of women versus men. I'm just wondering, are they kind of the men traditionally kind of more closed to you photographing the outside world and so on? I'm just wondering why that was.
Yeah, I mean, some of that I think comes down to my edit and some of it, but there is some truth to that. And I think in my experience, I find a lot of the men are a bit more reserved. I still get great relationships and get to spend out with them. And a lot of their work as well is sometimes less communal. So whereas the women will all be working in the garden or canning in the kitchen, things like that, often the men there'll be a few, working at the manufacturing plant, a few working in the pig barn, a few working in the cow barn. And then during harvest, there's a lot of people working together, but it's more smaller groups. And then there's the power dynamic too, because it is a patriarchal society and the men hold all the positions of power within the community. Sometimes I find the men are more reserved because they have more to lose if they were to ruffle feathers at all, whereas the women are often like, I find everyone speaks their mind pretty openly there, but the women especially really are unafraid to speak their mind, and almost because they have nothing, like no position of power to lose or anything like that, if that makes sense. And because they do all their work together communally, they have these beautiful, strong communal bonds. I think those bonds exist throughout the entire community, but I really notice it in the groups of women.
Right. Allison has a question. Allison?
Tim, you said you've been doing this for 15 years. And I just saw your work in the New York Times, and I wondered if that was like the first time you pitched it to them, or
That was the first time I published the work, and there's a bit of a funny story behind that. So I had applied in 2014 for the New York Times portfolio reviews that they do each spring, and I was lucky enough to be selected for that. I went out to New York with the work, and James Estrin from the Times asked me if I would publish the work as part of Len's blog, and I didn't feel it was ready, and I turned him down, and kind of last minute, because everything, it was really rushed. It was like he asked me on a Friday, they wanted to publish it on a Monday, and I just felt like, whoa, everything's happening so fast. And then I turned him down, and I explained why, and then I got on a plane back to Manitoba, and he couldn't get a hold of me, and it was like this scramble. And I got off the plane to all these messages, and I was like, oh my gosh, I blew my one opportunity, and like I've pissed off the most amazing editor and stuff. So I called him right away, and we chatted, and he's like one of the greatest people ever, and he just backed everything I said. He said, if you're not ready, like if you don't feel it's ready, then don't do it. And just like, he just trusted me with how I felt, and he reinforced that, which I've had a lot of experiences kind of like on the other side of that, where people are like they just get it in the paper. Like, let's just publish this. And it was really cool how much he respected the work. And he just said, come back to me later, if you're ever interested. And a year later, I had put a bunch more work into it, and I had felt good about the timing and that. So I reached out to him then, and I said, would you be interested in it now? And he was, and so that was kind of the first time that I published the work, and I'm grateful to him and to the Times for treating me with that respect and being able to do it kind of on my timeline.
And over that course of the year, did you have any self-doubt?
Oh, I've had self-doubt over the course of this last hour. My life is full of self-doubt. But yeah, absolutely. There was a lot of times where, especially right after, where I thought, did I make a mistake? Did I burn a bridge? Was this my one chance and stuff? Especially after that review in general. I'm a bit of an introvert and a wallflower. I think the camera has been great at giving me the tool to be able to access kind of like extrovert side of me. It gives me a reason to go up to talk to people and stuff. But I used to really struggle in social situations. And I went to the New York Times portfolio reviews, and I was like terrified about networking and meeting people. And I was like the quiet guy in the corner, and really came away from that feeling like, oh, I just wasted this opportunity, and feeling like, oh, I'll never be able to get good at this. But I've really, in more recent years, really tried to practice at just like it's a skill set like anything else, and it's so like learning to communicate, talk, and network with people, and be comfortable in those large social situations. It's not always easy. Sometimes I still get anxiety about it and that, but I have really worked on trying to improve on that and see the benefit of being able to do that, as well as seeing the benefits that come with being an introvert too. I think sometimes my quiet, unassuming nature, and that allows me into some intimate moments.
Well, I have to say, I'm sure I'm speaking for everyone, that you're a great presenter. You did a wonderful, wonderful job in letting us in to the intimacies of this body of work. So yeah, and that's a great story, to share. My God, I turned down the New York Times.
So ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a great story. Good for you. Very, very good for you. So, thank you again. And of course, Tim, you have a standing offer, to come back when you get out of your shell there. And, we would love to have you present, and any way we could help with, if you do a GoFundMe page for a book, yeah, we're certainly here for you, and you know, as you can see in the chat room, you know, everyone's loving the presentation. So again, thank you very, very much for doing that. You're one of the highlights of the whole Dubai Charger experience that, you know, we met and you got to present. So
Thank you so much. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that was an amazing experience, and it was great hanging out with you. And I really appreciate this opportunity. It was great being able to present to everyone.
and we'll do it again. And like just one little bit of note, you know, the week of January 26th through the 30th, we'll have 2 or 3 presenters showing work from what's going on in Ukraine. So that'll continue. But Tim, we thank you very much. Everyone, thank you so much for coming in. Jamie and Howard and Linda and George. I really appreciate everyone coming in. I saw a lot of other folks coming in earlier. So thank you again, Tim. Everybody have a great night, and we'll be in touch. Thanks, Allison. Thanks, everyone, for being here.
Thank you so much, everyone.
You guys.
Great presentations.
Hey, Frank, quick thing before you leave.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
And we'll have this up in the next 2 or 3 days.
Awesome.
Jay will have it up, and we'll send you the link for the YouTube page.
So cool. I really appreciate it. It was great catching up with you again, too.
Yeah, I mean, and you great storyteller. The work is really really terrific. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Very engaging. Love that. Love that.
Good. Good.
And
That's good.
never use that word luck.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I know. Yeah. I have mixed feelings with it, but it's one of those things. It's about just, you know, putting in the work.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Good night, Tim. Thank you.